Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So today in math, our objective for today is that students will be able to determine the volume of a cone, right? So keeping with the same theme that we've been on all week, which is volume, today we're gonna be looking at is a cone, right? Now, everybody's pretty much familiar with a cone, right? You see cones in your everyday life, whether they're, say, an ice cream cone, a traffic cone, a party hat, or maybe Fido, he's got an infection somewhere, he's gnawing at it, so he's got to have a cone around his neck, right? They're all different types of cones, and again, they're circular because the base of a cone, like we see here, is made up of a circle. Same thing, we can't see it here, but there's a circle at the base here and here as well, right? So if you recall, yesterday we were talking about the formulas for the equation of a cylinder, and we saw that if you have a cylinder that has a radius of r and a height of h, then to find the volume of that cylinder, we take the number pi, multiply it by the radius squared. Again, just remember this part here, that just gives us the area of the base of our cylinder. So that's telling us what the area of the bottom circle, and we multiply it by how tall that cylinder is. That's what the height is, right? Now, when we think about a cone and a cylinder, they're actually very similar, right? So this here is my cone. If I was to think about these sides going straight up though, and making a circle at the top, I would basically have a cylinder, right? So there's a really similar relationship between the two. And just by looking at this diagram here, it's really easy to see that the volume of a cone always has to be less than the volume of that cylinder, right? Because I could basically take this cone and fit it inside of the cylinder here if I had the actual object sitting in front of me, right? So that also tells us that the equation for the volume of both of them is also going to look similar, right? And now instead of actually trying to derive that formula for you, explaining it, I'm just going to give you the formula that we're going to practice with. So the equation for the volume of a cone is the volume is equal to 1/3 multiplied by pi times the radius squared times the height. Right now, that might look like a lot, right? Another way that you can think about it is looking at it like this: pi times the radius squared times the height, all of that divided by 3. These two equations are the same exact equation, right? They're just written differently. And again, it might look confusing, but when we look at this top part here, this here is basically just the formula for the volume of, I can't spell today, sorry, the volume of a cylinder. So remember I said that the equations can be related to each other. So if you want to figure out the volume of a cone, basically all you do is you're figuring out first the volume of a cylinder with the same dimensions, and then you're going to divide your result by 3, right? That's kind of what this 1/3 sitting out the front here does. You're taking 1/3 of the volume of the same cylinder. So again, basically if I have this cone here, it has a radius of r, a height of h. What I'm going to imagine is that I had a cylinder on top of this cone. So you're finding the volume of the cylinder, and then the cone is going to have a volume that's just 1/3 of that. So your final step would be to divide it by 3, right? It's that simple. So if you understood what we did yesterday, this here should be pretty simple. And if you didn't quite get what we did yesterday, today is a good practice of it. There's only one extra step on top of that, right? So I'm going to walk you through 2 examples just like yesterday. Then you're going to get a chance to practice these for yourself, right? So down here, I've got a cone. I'm going to start off with the same thing I always do, which is the equation that I'm using. So I know that my equation is v equals pi times my radius squared times the height, all of that divided by 3. Now again, I know it's a lot, but just think about it in steps. Up here, volume of a cone. The last thing I'm going to have to do with that is divide it by 3. So before we start, we need to try to identify things here. So we know right here, 3, that's my radius. So the radius of 3 is going to get substituted into that r in the equation here, right? Now, similarly, I know that the height is going to tell me how tall my cone is. So my height in this case is 9. I'm going to substitute that value in for h. So I end up with my volume is equal to pi multiplied by the radius squared. So remember, we said the radius was 3. So 3 gets replaced here for the r. It's still squared. Be very careful. I saw a couple of people forget that yesterday. And I'm going to multiply all of that by my height, which again was 9. Now, I'm just going to do the last step. Don't forget, we've got all of that divided by 3. Because if I only do the top part, that's going to give me what the cylinder would be. I'm looking for a cone in this case. So end up with V is equal to pi times 3 squared. I know that's equal to 9 times 9 over 3, right? Let's do one more step. V equals pi times 9 times 9. I could say is 81. All of this divided by 3, right? Now, if you have your calculator sitting in front of you, what you can do is just put this all into your calculator in this order. I'm going to show you exactly what to do right here, okay? So again, you're going to pull out your trusty Bandroid. You're going to turn it to landscape mode so that you can get that nice scientific calculator. And I'm going to say pi times 81 divided by 3. And I get 84.82. Again, rounding to 2 decimal places. So my final answer here is 84.82. We're not going to figure our units in this case. This was inches, so my units here are going to be cubic inches, right? There's my final answer. Now, if you wanted to, you could also simplify this down a little bit more, but for now, we'll just leave it like this here, okay? Now, similar setup over here. I'm going to start with the same exact way as before. V equals pi times my radius squared times my height, all divided by 3. So I get V equals pi. I first need to figure out what's my radius, right? So let's look back over here. So before the radius is the number on the bottom, but looking at the image, that's going to be my height actually. So be careful. It might be on the bottom, it might be on the top. You have to look for your circle. The circle is here. So I see a 4, but that goes straight across. So that's actually not my radius, that's my diameter. So in this case here, my radius is half of that. So the 2 is what's getting substituted into here. So it's pi times 2 squared multiplied by my height is the other number here. So 6 is what's getting replaced into h here. So times 6, and again, don't forget, we need to divide all of that by 3. So again, V equals pi 2 squared, that's 2 times 2, 4 times 6, all of that over 3. So I'm gonna get my volume is equal to pi times 24, all of this over 3. And again, there's some simplifying that you could do here, but at this point, I can put this entire thing into my calculator. And again, I'll walk you through that again, right? Because you can do this all in one step. So I'm gonna say pi multiplied by 24 divided by 3. Really important that you don't forget to divide by 3 or your answer is not gonna be correct. So in this case here, I've got 25.13, and do not forget your units. In this case, again, we have inches, so cubic inches. Okay, now the only other things that I wanted to add in is you guys see the way that I multiply this out here, right? I did it all in one string in my calculator. So I did pi times 24 divided by 3 in one step, right? You have to be careful because what I've seen some people do is I saw people would do something like this. They say pi times 24. Okay, so that's 75 point, let's say 4 if I was to round this, right? So they'd say 75.4. Then they would do the last step, which is divide by 3. So instead of using what we have here, they would say 75.4 divided by 3, which in this case gives me 25.13. Actually, I ended up with the same thing here, right? But sometimes if you do that rounding, you might end up where your final answer ends up being a little bit off. So try to save your rounding for the very end, right? If you guys have any questions, the Zoom session will be open, but today should be pretty simple. You're just gonna be looking at 6 questions that ask you to find the volume of a couple of shapes, right? When you finish that, you get to the next part 3. Again, it's a push yourself section. It's kind of like the same one we had yesterday, where you are given the volume and I'm asking you to figure out how tall this thing is, right? So just to help you get started there, you start off the same exact way. This is the volume. We know volume is equal to pi times the radius squared times the height, all of that divided by 3. So you substitute in what you know. We know this case here, that's our radius. We know this here is our volume. So you get 7,200 equals pi times 15 squared times your height, all of that divided by 3, right? Now I'm gonna let you try to figure out how to divide that by 3, how to end up solving for h, because that was the goal, right? So this is what you're trying to solve for here. You're gonna set this one up here in a similar fashion and let me know what you got, right? Again, if you have any questions, the Zoom session will be available, or you can write something in Google Classroom or send me an email, right? Good luck.